and they were like, oh man, oh that's messed up, man. They robbed you at gunpoint. Oh man, they were asking me for a ride, man. They're like, that's a good thing they didn't ask me for a ride, because man, I would have, they probably would have robbed me. So I'm starting to get my bearings, and I said to the guys, I said, well, did you guys get a look at what those guys look like? As soon as I said that to those guys, they just give me a blank stare. They get in the car and drive off. I talked to some people about the incident afterwards, and I talked to some detectives because I called the cops, and they said, and they said, yeah, they were just like, yeah, some guys had been robbed a couple weeks before, and they were doing that, and they did that, and there were some guys that have been arrested, described in the direction that they ran off in on you, that they ran off on. And I was like, wow, and it just, I started thinking, and I was like, man, I stopped at that gas station before, and I was thinking like, well, it's got to be fairly safe. It's near North Carolina A&T, and, I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's a university, it's a predominantly black university. And I said that to the cop, and I said, I went to UNCG, and they were like, well, the funny thing about it is that, they said, yeah, the sad thing about it is that, more A&T students tend to get victimized than UNCG students do. And I'm like, oh yeah, wow, that's crazy. And, I never stopped at that gas station again, but I did drive through that part of town. Well, when I drove through that part of town, what I saw was, I was like, well, I was thinking to myself, this is a nice part of town. What's going on here? It's a university. Because I always thought, there was a Y and there was a church and stuff like that. They had stores. I'm like, what's going on? But when I drove through after that, I noticed everything had locks on it. There was a metal lock on the churches. There were metal doors on the convenience marts, everything. And then every person I talked to that went to A&T said, yeah, I don't get out late at night. I don't go out late at night there. I was like, Jesus. I was like, oh my God, like, wow. And just, I was like, wow, man, you got kids that are just trying to go to college. And that's kind of thinking about that. When I learned about the projects, that kind of put two and two together, because it's systematic. It's black on black crime. Because North Carolina A&T, if you go to, it's the same way over in Durham, and then over in Winston-Salem here, it's the same way. The predominantly black colleges are located right next to the projects, but the predominantly black colleges were there first, before the projects. The projects were put there to create black on black crime. They were systematically put there by J. Edgar Hoover and different people, and it was perpetuated later when the Nixon administration continued the war on drugs. So there's a lot of stuff and a lot of backlash. You got to think that was only a little over 40 years ago. And all this stuff that I'm stating is public record, not trying to step on anyone's toes. If you like Nixon, yeah, his administration did some good things, but clearly that was pretty horrible, and he was pretty paranoid, and, and that's one of the pretty horrible things about it. J. Edgar Hoover, also was homosexual, I'll say that, and Hoover, you can say what you want to say, about whether you think it's right or wrong, personally, I don't have a problem with homosexuals, I don't, but, and if you do, that's fine, have a live and let live attitude about it. Nice to see Chick-fil-A do what they did for the victims in Orlando. Obviously I don't think any rational person, I think at least feels that, someone shouldn't be killed like that, for their sexuality. But, and Hoover was homosexual, and I think what he was doing, in his particular case, was that he was coming down on a group of people and looking to oppress them. He was looking to blame them for his problems, when he was oppressed himself. And I think that's one of the things that people have to look at, and that's just something that's really, again, that's just something you have to look at, and it's systematic, and that's something that, I highly recommend people see the movie J. Edgar too with Leonardo DiCaprio. It's a really good movie. It is a lot of insight into the history of the FBI. I think you'll like it. So go ahead and check that out. And I'm just going to throw this one more thing out here as far as my views on drugs are concerned. Listen, as far as the legalization of marijuana and stuff is concerned, I don't have a problem on a legal level with people smoking pot. It's one of those drugs where, I think that I know pretty much, obviously the side effects are different, but pot, alcohol, all that stuff. Alcohol can be consumed healthy if you drink 2 beers or less, and obviously some kind of beer is better than better for you than others. I don't drink, but that's fine, and I'm not here to judge. Pot and cigarettes both have their issues. They cause respiratory problems and this and that. And my thing about it is, I think, if you legalize pot, the same thing's going to happen like with cigarettes. When people found out from the Surgeon General's warning that cigarettes were bad for you, eventually, and people started seeing all the horrible cancer-related deaths from them, they stopped smoking it. They stopped. Not as many Americans smoke as they once did. They don't have cigarette commercials on TV anymore. So, that's one of those things where, again, and with pot, I think that honestly, if they made it legal, I think kids wouldn't get as much of a kick out of doing it because it was illegal. I think they would do it. Honestly, I've talked to people who lived in Holland, and some of them smoke pot, but for a lot of them, it's just not that much of an appeal because it's there and it's legal, and it's just something that, oh, whoop-de-doo, and at the end of the day, what I've found is, I think that drugs should be treated as, drug use should be treated as an illness and, not made illegal. That's my personal views on it. And not to talk down to anybody who smokes pot, but personally, my experience, and again, it varies with people, but what I found is that my experience with a lot of people who did dope, especially in high school and in college, was that a lot of them were just hanging out together because dope was the only thing that they had in common. And it's good to find common ground on stuff, but seriously, like pot, it feels like it's pathetic. I'm sorry. It's one of those things where it's like, you get together, you do that, you can say, oh, well, you can abuse cheeseburgers. Sure, you can abuse cheeseburgers, and you can also abuse pot too. You smoke too much of it, whatever. And that's why I don't like any of that stuff. Call me cornball, rah, whatever, but I like exercising, I like eating healthy, I like doing that, like a little Ben and Jerry's ice cream here and there, but, other than that, it's like, hey, exercising, doing martial arts, stuff like that. That's one of the reasons I love doing that kind of stuff because, doing wrestling, doing my judo, doing my grappling, my highest on grappling, mixed martial arts, I don't fight MMA, but, doing that stuff with those people. One of the greatest things that you can do is train. You let bygones be bygones when it comes to training that stuff. It doesn't matter what your politics are, what you think, what your religion is. You go in there and you let bygones be bygones, and that's what's cool about it. That's why I love it, and that's why I'm encouraging people to train. In fact, I'm going to use this as an opportunity now. Sean Best, my buddy, my longtime friend, we reconnected in the past year. You're the man, Sean, for a variety of reasons, but people should get to know you. Check out Star Fitness in Roanoke. Also, check out R&D, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu School, the Nito and the Nito Judo Club. It's all the same place. It's here in Winston-Salem on Jonestown Road. Check that out. And also check out, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I'm a volunteer assistant wrestling coach at Reynolds, looking into possibly getting some motivational speaking and stuff as well. I don't know how much this is motivating you when you hear this, but whatever. I think that I like to think I can do that, and I can, I've done some good things for some kids, I think, wrestling wise, and I look forward to doing that some more in the future. So yeah, check out RJ Reynolds Wrestling as well. I'm throwing that out there. Great stuff. Excuse me, whew, little stuff coming up there, burp. But yeah, check it out. We'll go and just keep